Similang Afsheni Ralocha Sanwanani Mulweni. My name is Naledi Mfoloe, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the latest edition of the African Diaspora News channel, where we unravel the stories that shape our world and our communities. Now, today I want to share my thoughts on something that, frankly, I do find quite frustrating and yet desperate. What Zimbabwe is doing in its recent attempts to win favor with the United States, particularly under the administration of course, President Donald Trump. Now, watching this unfold feels like witnessing a desperate scramble that doesn't seem to benefit the people of Zimbabwe at all. So here's what's happening, right? Zimbabwe, after years of strained relations with the United States, has decided to make some significant moves to try to repair its relationship with Washington. They've slashed all taxes on United States goods coming into the country and have actually began paying compensation to white farmers who have lost land in the controversial land expropriation reforms of the early 2000s. Now, on the surface, these might seem like reasonable steps on the surface, right? But when you dig deeper, it's clear to me that Zimbabwe is playing the wrong game and playing it with the wrong reasons. Now, let me be clear, right? The land reform in Zimbabwe was far from perfect, and the violence that accompanied them left a lot of people in pain and devastation. But what Zimbabwe is doing right now is pleasing a foreign power like the United States, especially under the Trump's leadership, is misguided. And why? Because it feels like a cheap move to carry favor from a country that has never shown consistent support for Zimbabwe or its people, especially during the darkest times. It seems as though Zimbabwe is rolling out the red carpet for a power that, frankly, hasn't even had its people's best interests at heart for decades. Because as we know, Zimbabwe has been facing an economic collapse for over 2 decades now. They've had job losses, they've had political instability. So you would think, right, that the priority for the government would be to focus on stabilizing the country from within, right, and investing in infrastructure and addressing the needs of the people. But instead, we're seeing a government that's more interested in playing politics with the US, as if the approval of a foreign government is key to Zimbabwe's salvation. And this situation is even more absurd when you consider that Zimbabwe's trade with the United States is actually extremely small, which is around $111 million, which is a far cry from the large trade flows other nations have with the United States. So what's really in it for Zimbabwe? That's the real question. Why go to lengths to appease the United States, especially when Trump's administration has been known for imposing tariffs on African nations? To me, it seems like a shallow effort to win favor with a government that has been notorious for its lack of interest in genuine partnerships with African nations. Now, about this whole idea of appeasing Trump, it's not just about the land compensation. It's about Zimbabwe eliminating tariffs on the US goods. In the wake of Trump's tariffs, Zimbabwe is trying to play ball and be the good little nation, right? But here's the thing. Trump doesn't have Africa's best interests in mind. Under his administration, we've seen Africa treated as a commodity, something to be manipulated for economic gains. So the idea that Zimbabwe's leadership is bending over backward to please him for economic advantages is honestly quite baffling. Because at the end of the day, this whole situation feels like a bad political chess move. Zimbabwe's leadership is trying to please the US, but at what cost? The economic and political situation in Zimbabwe demands internal solutions, if you ask. We've seen other countries like South Africa take a much stronger stance of dealing with the colonial past. There's no need to be pandering to powers that have, for decades, shown little interest in the well-being of Africa. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that engaging with the US is inherently bad, but Zimbabwe should not be playing these political games at the expense of its own people. It's high time that African nations, Zimbabwe included, start making decisions that prioritize their own development and sovereignty over trying to please foreign powers who have their best interests at heart. I say, let's stop licking the boots of foreign powers. It's time for Zimbabwe to find its own way forward without pandering to the US, without appeasing a colonial legacy, and without actually sacrificing the dignity of its people. What do you think? Let's keep engaging in the comment section. I want to hear what your thoughts on this. While you're at it, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up